Hello, good evening to all of you. I hope all of you are doing well. So in today's class, we're going to discuss about software reuse. So software reuse is an approach in software engineering that aims at enabling reuse of various aspects of interest from a system to a new system that is to be developed. Okay. So by any aspect of interest, we mean anything and everything that can be potentially reused. Now, what is the advantage of reuse? So the major advantages of reuse are um, reuse helps in reducing the overall software development cost because we've seen that since there is a continuous advancement in technological paradigm. So now what we have is your hardware system capable of sustaining complex computational application, because of which there is an increasing demand of complex system from the customer. So for development of a complex system, we need greater amount of time and greater amount of cost. So by reusing components, what we can do is we can cut short on the development cost. Now, by reusing components, we can not only cut short on development cost, but we can also cut short on development time. And the reusable components do assure quality. So we'll come to that in sequence. So first is by enforcing reuse, what we can do is we can reduce the overall software development cost, right? And now what we have is we have software models that explicitly depends on reuse, right? So for example, we have component assembly model, we have rapid application development, we have spiral model that explicitly depends on reuse of the existing components, right? So depending upon what kind of approach we want, we can take up any of the software development methods and then enforce reusability on that. Now, as I've said, reuse not only allows for reduction in the development cost, but it also allows for reduction in development time, and it also ensures quality because a reusable component is a component that has already been thoroughly tested. The integrity of the module is sound. Okay, so such kind of model definitely ensures quality. So here we have a win-win situation. So we have reduction in the cost, we have reduction in the time, and we have assurance of the quality. Right? So that is what reuse is capable of providing. It's capable of providing a system within limited amount of time, with limited amount of cost, and with quality. Now, what can be potentially reused? So everything and anything belonging to a system can be reused. So what we can do is we can reuse specification document, we can reuse design, we can reuse code, we can reuse test cases, we can reuse knowledge. Anything and everything pertaining to system can be reused. But we need to ensure that a proper mechanism is established for promoting reuse. So now, why there is no reuse so far? Now, there might be various reasons why there is minimal or no reuse so far. The first reason is that the traditional approach does not have any scope for reusability, right? So, traditional approach of software development does not provide any scope for reusability. Even if there is a similarity between two different systems, we tend to implement everything from scratch. The second important reason why there is no reusability so far is the lack of ability to find similarity, right? So one may not be capable of identifying similarity between different systems. So if you cannot identify similarity, then you cannot enforce reuse. The third important aspect is the lack of ability to create reusable components. Right? Okay, so it may so happen that you may not be capable of creating a system as a collection of reusable components. So in such kind of situation, you cannot enforce reuse. The next important aspect is inability in identifying the reusable information or right kind of reusable information can also be a reason. So if you do not have the capability of identifying right kind of reusable information, then what you cannot do is you cannot enforce reuse. The next important aspect why we do not have reuse so far is because programmers may not be willing to accept the modules that may be developed by someone else because it is difficult to understand. So the unwillingness of the programmer to accept reusable modules that are being developed by someone else may be the reason for for no reuse so far. So these are some of the prominent reason why there's no reuse so far, because traditional approach does not allow for reusability. Okay, the lack of ability to find similarity, the lack of component creation, the lack of ability to identify right kind of information for reuse, and the unwillingness to accept the modules that has been developed by someone else because it may be difficult to understand. Now, what may be the basic issues that are maybe associated with reuse? So, the basic issues are component creation, component indexing, searching, understanding, adaptation, and repository maintenance. So, these are the inherent steps that are involved. So, component creation basically means identifying reusable components. Component indexing basically means associating meaningful identifiers with the various components, which will help in searching. So component searching basically means devising a search mechanism that enables one to search the modules in a very effective manner. Component understanding basically refers to providing sufficient amount of knowledge with the components so that it can be understood and can be reused in a system. Adaptation basically means a mechanism for bringing about some cosmetic changes to the software system, right, or the module so that it can be reused in a new system. And repository maintenance, if an example, induction of new module, removal of obsolete module, induction of new application, removal of the obsolete application, and so on and so forth. So there are various operations that are related to repository maintenance. So just see component identifying reusable components, component indexing, classification of reusable components so that they can be easily searched, searching, deploying right kind of search mechanism for searching, enabling proper search, understanding to decide whether to we can reuse or reuse the component or not. So sufficient amount of knowledge has to be provided for understanding. Adaptation, bring about a change to the model that can potentially be used. Okay, and repository maintenance, component entering. So everything related to component management, right? So now a possible reuse approach. So possible reuse approach. So whenever we are trying to build up a system, the system has to be built up in a manner that what we have is we have system being organized as a collection of reusable blocks. Okay. Then identify reusable components once the system development is over. Enhance reusability of identified reusable components and catalog it into a component library. So what you need to do is you need to create a library of reusable components that can be looked for whenever you want to enforce reuse. Now let us try to understand what is domain, what is domain analysis, and what's domain reuse domain. So domain basically means an aspect of interest. So just see, we have systems like operating systems. So operating system belongs to a domain of software application, right? We have railway reservation system, airline reservation system, bus reservation system falling into one domain of application. We have stock market software system falling into one domain of application. So domain basically means of an area of interest. Okay, right? Because it is very important for one to identify the system into a particular domain and the components of the systems into a particular domain. Because what we can do is we can reuse components belonging to a domain, right, to a new system that belongs to the same domain. So what we cannot have is we cannot have cross domain reuse of the components, right? So it's very important for one to identify the domain to which the software belongs to, so that what we can do is we can rightfully place the components there and enforce reusability. So the objective of domain analysis is to identify reusable components for a particular domain or problem domain, right? So as we have learned in case of object-oriented software development approach, we have learned about domain object model. So domain object model is a representation of conceptual models belonging to a particular domain of interest, where we try to identify the objects, or that is the entities, the operations and relationships. So just see, domain analysis basically tries to perform that. It tries to identify the objects, operations, and relationships between them. So what we can do is we can use a body of information for reuse, right? So we can use a body of information for reuse. So that means any aspect can be reused only if we can categorize that particular information to a particular domain, right? Okay, so it's very much important. So only if we have a very deep and a comprehensive relationship existing between different information items that is based on certain similarity, what we can do is we can reuse that particular body of information, right? So that is very much important. That means you need to have a very good understanding about the body of information that can be potentially reused. So a domain is a shared understanding of some community, right? Again, so that is the technical knowledge about the problem area or the area of interest, right? So as I've talked about, so the reservation system falls into all the reservation system falls into a particular domain. Operating system falls into a particular domain. Data processing applications falls into a particular domain. So domain is characterized by similarity. So in today's class, what we learned about is we have learned about what is software reuse. We have learned about why we need to have software reuse, and we learned about what are the aspects of the software that can be potentially reused. Why we have learned about why there is no reuse so far, and we have learned about what are the basic issues that needs to be addressed whenever you are trying to enforce reuse. And we have learned about what are the possible reuse approach or what might be the possible steps in the reuse approach. And we have learned about what is the domain, what is domain analysis, and what is a reuse domain. So in the next class, what we're going to continue with this, we are going to continue with domain analysis. So thank you very much.